Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Void Knight. This is Void Cleave Racing Strike in Season 2. All gameplay that you were watching was taken at Corruption 1030. Thank you. So, Void Cleaver Racing Strike. This is a build that I have done multiple times. I've done one every season. Going all the way back to beta. It was actually my first real build guide that kind of took off. I put out a build guide right before the game launched, Season 0 or Cycle 1, whichever way you want to look at it. Right before that launched, the day before, I put out Void Cleaver Racing Strike, and that one, it took off. And I'm very grateful to this build ever since. And so I've always done one every season, just as kind of an update of it. And I will say that this season's Void Cleaver Racing Strike looks remarkably different compared to seasons past. Traditionally in the past, you would use the Void Cleave node. You would take the node that lets you automatically crit on your next Erasing Strike, and then you would just take a bunch of damage modifiers just to increase it all. Use your Abyssal Echoes, use anything that will give you a nice little damage bump, and then Void Cleave Erasing Strike. Well, especially in this season, unfortunately, it's just not able to cut it. It's not able to keep up with the amount of damage that is required to really compete on the high end, so to speak. Unfortunately, it's just a little slow. That was very apparent with the Master Yi build I did prior. Earlier in this season, it kind of felt like the same way. It used to be a good build, but unfortunately the damage is just not able to keep up. And that's how I feel about Void Cleaver Racing Strike in the traditional sense. So I am using World Splitter, a very popular axe, and Erasing Strike's very strong this season as well. And this is kind of similar to more of the meta Erasing Strike that's going around out there, but I am still using Void Cleave. I'm still using Vengeance, which was another key piece to the Void Cleaver Racing Strike that I did in the past. I'm not using Abyssal Echoes. I'm using Healing Hands for a little extra stat proccing, as well as some damage reduction. That's very nice. And yeah, I'm having a great time with it. As you can see in the gameplay footage, the build is really based around just dashing forward and then using a Racing Strike really fast, wiping out a bunch of stuff, moving forward, rinse, repeat, and that's the way I like it. This build it feels very snappy, and it feels like this is how I like to play the game. It kind of reminds me of Rive a little bit. There's a lot more area of effect here. You certainly look less like a 7. It looks less cool, all right? I'm just going to say it looks less cool. But it does remind me of playing Rive, just the way I would just dash forward, spam a bunch of hits, and then keep on going. It's very quick. And for that, I like the build. The build does very well. This is 1000 corruption. I'm sure I could have pushed it even more, but I decided to just stop here. I feel like once you hit 1000 corruption, that's it. Your build is good. Your build is solid. Now, if you want to keep going, you can. I think this build can handle it to at least 1500 corruption, but I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. So let's go ahead and take a look at some bosses. This build is set up to be bursty. All right, it's all about the burst. Here's Raye, here's the Harbinger, and it just kind of just melts through them. Well, is melting the right word? It cleaves through them. It erases them. There we go. It erases them very quick. This build is fast. It's bursty, and that's the way I like it. And if we go to Aberoth, honestly, it could have killed Aberoth faster had I not been stuck on all of his low damaging phases he does, as he likes to give his monologues and whatnot. Like, yeah, it cuts through Aberoth pretty quick as well. And then I'm sure on everybody's mind, how does it do against Uber Aberoth? I think it does okay. There is a certain amount of, how do I put this? There is a certain amount of, you have to have knowledge of the fight and know where to use certain things. You might see that I have Rebuke on my skill bar, and the Rebuke has to be used strategically. We're not spec'd into Rebuke, but it has to be used strategically because you could still get one shot, and that's what typically happens against them. So long answer, I haven't short answer, I haven't killed Aberoth with it, Uber Aberoth with this build. I think it's capable of killing Uber Aberoth, but it needs a lot more refinement. And since I already killed Uber Aberoth with Judgment Paladin, I think my quest for trying to kill Uber Aberoth is a little over at this point. I just want to move on and play other builds. Nonetheless, if I wanted to spend some time refining this build, I think it could do it. I think it could do it with this current setup. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead, jump into the game, go ahead and talk about the gear. I'll show you my different options. In the description down below, you'll find a couple links. There'll be some planners, a loot filter guide, that sort of thing. I think you guys enjoy this. If you like what I do here, leave a like, possibly subscribe. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the game. Let's go. All right, here we are in game. So let me give you a nice little overview. We are going to go over a demonstration of how the build works, the gear, the idols, the blessings, the skills, the passive tree. The gear section historically, and I already know this time, is going to be the longest for sure. Timestamps in the description down below. Gear section, I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different options that I like to use. Here in the demonstration option that's about to take off, I'm going to show you how I play the build and reasoning and thinking that goes on into it. So let's go ahead and jump into that right now. So how does this build work? It's pretty simple, but there is a nice little combo to it. I like how snappy it feels. So we're running through. Here's an enemy. Void Cleave in. Hit him with this vengeance, right? Hit him with the vengeance, then let him have it. Right? Let him have it. All right, now maybe this is a tougher enemy, right? Most enemies, they'd already be dead at this point, but maybe this is a tougher enemy or a boss, and you really want to stick it to them. So you're going to be moving forward, Void Cleave in, hit him with the vengeance, hit him with the anomaly, right? And then go. Boom, just go. Burst it. Once you start running out of mana, hit him real quick with the vengeance, hit him with another Void Cleave. Then go. You see what I'm saying? And with this nice little flow, you can keep it going pretty well. All right? You can keep it going pretty well. Now, unlike other options out there, I'm referring to like the meta Erasing Strike build. This build is not able to continually keep doing Erasing Strike. It can do it pretty well, right? But it doesn't have infinite Erasing Strike potential. It's almost there. But it's a little out of it. And so for me, when I'm going through my rotation, when I'm out of mana and I know I need half a second more, so to speak, I'll use Vengeance. This will give us damage reduction, that sort of thing. I'll do a Void Cleave, reapply critical vulnerability to the enemy, and then go again. That is the rotation I have when it comes to this. All right, now just to show you, I have just a regular World Splitter with no extra melee attack speed. This one has a lot of melee attack speed. With my current setup, it's not as bursty, but you can just hold down Erasing Strike and go for it. I don't think this is as interesting, and you might be better off with the more meta Erasing Strike build if this is something that you're into. But I wanted to show you that this is an option. You could absolutely play this build without the melee, the increased melee attack speed on World Splitter. You can still do all the same things. I wanted to show you that it is possible. And you could even just sort of infinite Erasing Strike if you wanted. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about the gear. Let me throw that one back on real quick. So, for this build, we're using a Leonines. You're looking for that reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. You want to try and get that up as high as possible. You want to try and get it to about 85%. You're looking for mana, and then health. I'm almost there, right? This is not the best helmet. I just couldn't find one while I was farming for this build. But yeah, tier 7 flat mana is what I recommend. And then T5 increased mana. And then increase health, flat health. That's what you need. I only had the one Titan heart with 1 LP, unfortunately. So you're going to want a Racing Strike. After that, if I had a 2 LP, I would either go health or mana, depending on your defensive needs. But I think mana would probably be the better slam in this case. World Splitter needs no introduction. It's how this build works the way it does. If you can get a 2 LP, I recommend getting melee void damage on there. And if you want to do it the way I'm playing, increased melee attack speed could help. But if you're not able to get that there, if your only option is just a 1 LP World Splitter, you can try and get some melee attack speed elsewhere on the build. Nonetheless, I was able to get it right here. The options you're looking for on World Splitter, if you look at the very bottom where it says increased mana, you're going to want to get that as close to 52% as possible. After that, everything else just kind of falls into place. After that, I would then prioritize the critical strike chance for melee attacks per 1 mana cost. You're going to want to try and get 0.5. I got it to be 0.4. So if you can get 0.5, that means essentially what this means right here is you get base critical strike chance for your melee attacks per 1 mana cost. So if the cost of your Erasing Strike is at a certain point, you don't really need a bunch of other increased critical strike chance or anything like that. You're getting enough base out of your World Splitter. The way I have my Erasing Strike set up right now is I increase the cost to 45, right? So let me pull out a calculator for you guys. All right, so 45 base times 0.4 is 18. So whenever I attack with a Racing Strike, I'm adding 18% base critical strike chance per hit with the way I have it set up. And obviously you can increase this number by you can increase that base critical strike chance by increasing this number. But the way I have it set up right now, this current setup, it feels very comfortable. I think this is the happy medium. If you had a 0.5, right, that'd be even more base critical strike chance. You might not even need to increase the cost of Erasing Strike in order to achieve that. But that's the way I have it set up. That's the way I would recommend. Mana is very important on this build. Flames of Midnight, I opted for just a little bit of increased critical strike chance. We're getting some from Anomaly, but I don't always have that up. So having a nice 48%, 50%, somewhere around there, it's going to do the build a world of good. Siphon of Anguish, this is not the best rolled one. It's one that had some decent stats. The increased damage over time, it does next to nothing for us, but this was a pretty nice Siphon of Anguish. I would say shoot for strength and health, or health and then strength, some sort of mix of that. If you have just one source of increased critical strike chance, I think you'll be fine. So shoot for whatever. You could, if you feel like your critical strike chance is in a good spot altogether, maybe you have a 0.5 here and you're able to keep the uptime Anomaly pretty well, you can just shoot for strength and health on both reigns. Otherwise, I think this is just what you're looking for. You're looking for a Siphon of Anguish. This is what's going to allow you to apply Doom. And next is Shatter Chains. I got extremely lucky with this, all right? I've only found two LP Shatter Chains this season. And I got one with Health, and I got one with Cleanse. I'm ecstatic. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy about this. So, yeah. So, Shatter Chains. A lot of great options for you if you are a melee build. You're going for that increased armor, that melee void damage, that increased melee damage, and more importantly, per stack of Doom, stacks up to 4 times. You get 5% more melee damage per stack of Doom. So, yeah, you use Siphon of Anguish to apply Doom, stacks up to 4 times per stack of Doom on the target. It takes 5% more melee damage. A nice more melee multiplier. All right, cool. So let's talk about Nihilus real quick. You get this from regular Aberoth. The reason why we like to use Nihilus is because it gives you a nice fat increased percentage to mana on the implicit. I got extremely lucky with this one. 12% increased health, 12% increased mana. I slammed it with T7 mana. Unfortunately, I wasn't as lucky with the skills department. That would be your next important stat to get. You can potentially get up to +2 to your skills. I only got +1. And then your next important stat after that would be your plus to all res. I got a 14%, very lucky there. This is a great amulet. Highly recommend this one. Try and get yourself a Nihilus and slam it with T7 mana. Try and get as close to that max increase mana as possible. Right now, currently on my character, we have a cap, a max of 1,315. I think this build feels good when you're at 1,000 plus. Awesome. Get yourself a Nihilus. Let's talk about the gloves real quick. We got a couple different options here. So I got this pair of gloves from when I killed Uber Aberoth with my Judgment Paladin. But all gameplay that you saw in this that you saw in the intro was using this pair of gloves. I didn't want to be like, hey guys, this is a great build, you should play it. By the way, you need to have Uber Aberoth stuff in order to compete. That's kind of stupid. This is a nice to have for sure. You have to restructure the build in a certain way since it gives you so much melee attack speed if you're using Immortal Vise. Here, I'll show you. It just, your melee attack speeds become too much, right? Like there's a certain amount of infinite that you like to have, but there's a little too much infinite, if that makes sense. Still, it's a great pickup. It makes you feel even more snappier than before. But I would like to also point out my mana has gone down to 1,263 from 1,315. Still, that's not too bad. Immortal Vice, it's a great pickup if you have it laying around. You don't need it. I wanted to showcase that these arcane bracers are actually very good because you're able to get the mana on the implicit as well as picking up T7 mana on the pair of gloves as well. What you're really looking for here, I would say, is mana, strength, chance to shred armor, health, hybrid health. You could also opt for, if you wanted to put T7 strength on your reins, you could also opt for critical strike chance instead of strength. Like I said, having one source of critical strike chance can go a long way. So you could also opt for that as well. I would say ultimately, though, your best in slot is probably going to be a good pair of Eternal Gauntlets. I'm going to say this, though. I've been doing just fine with Arcane Bracers. I'm doing 1,000 Corruption. I'm handling bosses just fine. Like I said, every bit of gameplay that you saw in the intro was using these gloves. You could use this, try and get as close to 120, and then try and get a good chance to shred armor, and then try and get some strength. Something like that. Strength, critical strike chance, and health if possible. The reason why I'm not using these is it's a large loss of mana. And the way it is right now, I was able to get some physical resistance on here. I would have to, mess around with my idols to try and get my physical resistance up. If we take a look at this, right? If we take a look at this, it's not much of an armor loss, so to speak, because I have strength on here. So at this point, it would just be the armor mitigation. I'm doing just fine in my Echo runs, but if you find yourself really needing that armor mitigation applying to dots, I would say, maybe get yourself some Eternal Gauntlets if you're struggling, or if you're really trying to push corruption, or if you're trying to kill Uber Aberoth and you want to do it with this build and you don't have something like Immortal Vice laying around, then yeah, definitely go ahead and use the Eternal Gauntlets. But for the most part, I feel like Arcane Bracers are a good pickup. Potentially. Next, let's talk about the boots. This is another source of, we got a couple different options here. So I like the Inevitable. They're a good pair of all-around boots for Erasing Strike to just leave on, if that makes sense. You can just leave this on. You're immune to slow. You're immune to chill. And I mean, you're not as fast as, like, let's say, Dark Stride, but you don't have to think about it. It's just there. You want to go fight some bosses, the inevitable's already on. You want to go do something else, the inevitable's already on. But Dark Stride is probably going to be a better, if we look right here, it is a difference of about 20% movement speed. So, I mean, yeah, there's a good amount of movement speed on the line here. On top of it, you get that extra charge for Void Cleave. That feels very nice. You also gain a little bit more damage. You can also realistically get a 2 LP pair of Dark Strides, so you can get something like Vitality or whatever else on there. So, I mean, Dark Stride could be a very good pickup for any build. It's very good for mapping, right? You get that extra charge to Void Cleave, and you're able to move around like that. I personally just found myself leaving the inevitable on. Essentially, one reason why we'd want to use them. You get the slow immunity. You can't be stunned while using Erasing Strike, which is very nice. But also, the main reason is that less damage taken while using Erasing Strike. Just right here, when you're doing those burst windows, it's really nice knowing you can't be stunned. You can't. You're taking reduced damage, and then you use Void Cleave to get out. Right, you can use Void Cleave to get out. I will say one problem with Erasing Strike that can happen is you could potentially get animation locked. So I find myself sometimes getting animation locked like this. Like you're just in the middle of doing an animation. It's not as bad with this build because the melee attack speed is very fast. But knowing that you're going to have some defensive measures in place while you're doing that, I like that. Nonetheless, Dark Stride's really great for mapping. Now let's talk about the damage. The damage king, if we will, is Solaron's Step. You get the melee critical strike multiplier if you can get 105%. The movement speed's not too bad. It's not that much different from the inevitable. One thing that will happen though is you will lose a lot of physical resistance. I'm at 11%. If that's the case, you're going to have to come over to this lady right here. Oh, no, not this lady. You're going to have to go to the end of time. Right? You're going to have to go to the end of time, and you're going to have to talk to the lady or, you know, go get yourself the physical resistance blessing, and then you're off to the races. But this will be doing the most damage out of all of them. As you can see, it's an instant damage boost. Yeah, so if you're just looking for just straight up damage, Solaron's is great. If you're looking for a lot more speed because you want to map faster, Dark Strides is a great pickup. Or if you're like me, you just want to, you know, put on something, you just want to set it and forget it, the inevitable. All right, let's move on to our last piece of gear, Anchor of Oblivion. I like this relic so much, I even made its own dedicated video about it. You're looking for mana on Anchor of Oblivion. A couple good reasons why we like Anchor of Oblivion. A good amount of armor, increased void damage, capture endurance for you, endurance threshold, that sort of thing. But let's talk about some other options. You could use just a regular relic. You could use you can use a Code of the Erase. I don't have a good one to showcase for this build right now. But you could use something like this if you're able to get mana on one of these things. You can use this. You do take a little bit of a minus melee attack mana cost, which if you're relying on that mana cost to try and increase the critical strike capability of your Erasing Strike, that can kind of mess with it, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. You get increased armor. You get armor mitigation also applies to dots. You get a +1 to sentinel skills. This is a good pickup, especially if you got one with max T7 mana and maybe some other nice affixes to have. But if that's the case, you're going to have to take care of your endurance elsewhere. Again, that's what makes Anchor of Oblivion such a great pickup for Void Knight builds. But assuming you don't want any of that, assuming you don't care about any of that and you don't mind using something else and let's say you got, some Uber Aberoth gear just laying on hand. You could use Shattered Worlds. You pop that in. Let's talk about Shattered Worlds real quick. It gives you base critical strike chance. It gives you damage reduction. You're immune to slow, which, I mean, we already have with the inevitable, but nonetheless, you get it. You get haste. Our movement speed is now 138%. If you remember, before it was 108, so we now got that. We get +1 to all skills. We get +8 to all attributes. We get increased effect. This thing's cracked. The reason why I don't have this on the build right now is this is in the same lane as the Immortal Vise. Not a lot of people are going to have this stuff around. Maybe you're a Merchant's Guild and you're able to buy one, a cheap one or something like that. Then yeah, you can go for that. But I play Circle of Fortune, if it wasn't apparent from all the Circle of Fortune tags on my gear. I play Circle of Fortune. So the only way I'm going to have a Shattered Worlds is if I go kill Uberoth myself and hopefully he drops it. But I did. On a different build. I can't assume that you, the viewer, have done the same exact thing. That's why I think it's just better to be showcasing pieces of gear that you can get from bosses. So where do you get Anchor of Oblivion? If you see my video, you already know, but if you haven't, you get it from this guy. You get it from Admiral Crabman, Follow the Empire. You can pick it up here. Go ahead, kill him a couple different times. You're looking for 1 LP. You're trying to get mana. If I had 2 LP, I would do mana and health or mana and strength or something like that. But for the most part, get yourself Anchor of Oblivion. Get some mana on there. You're off to the races. All right, that is the gear. That is the different gear options. Let's go ahead and talk about the idols. This is going to be pretty quick. It's going to be pretty quick. All right. So you're just looking to make up for any resistances you are lacking here. And then on top of that, you're going to be looking for any sort of mana health pickup, right? Any sort of mana health. This is probably going to be your ideal idol is, well, maybe not that exact one. Maybe, where is it? Okay. It's going to be something like this. You're going to be looking for mana health and then mana on the prefix. So mana prefix and then health mana. I got a couple different. Yeah. So you're looking for this along with this, right? You're looking for mana and mana regen and then health and mana. If you can get that, you get these from like your tombs and cemeteries and all sorts of things. You're going to be looking for that, but prioritize taking care of your resistances first. And then you can go ahead and grab whatever you're looking for. In fact, I just realized I didn't need that. So look at that. I got even more mana now. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. On the spot fixing. Wait, hold up. Can we fix it even more? Ayo, they are powerful. All right. I'm going to say I did that on purpose just to showcase the power. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. They are powerful, all right? Like, that was an increase of 16 mana just by throwing that on there. So, try and get yourself a bunch of these. Try and get the hybrid ones. But like I said, prioritize taking care of your resistances first. I mean, if you got 75 or 74, that's good enough, right? All right, and then your next one you're going to be looking for is increased echo damage when a skill echoes, right? You're going to be looking for these. And then you're going to be looking for increased melee void damage or armor shred. Your choice. I got one of both. But yeah, you're going to be looking for increased echo damage when a skill echoes and increased melee void damage and or armor shred. As for your slammed affixes, look for increased critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier. Health is not bad. This one has increased healing effectiveness. That's not too bad if you can. I know this system is pretty finicky. So I know the system is pretty freaking finicky. So you kind of take what you can get. I had T6 health. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just keep it. But yeah, you can also go for a critical strike multiplier, critical strike chance. Yeah. You can go with that. All right, that is the idols. Let's go ahead and talk about the blessings real quick. I always like to show it from this perspective just because you can identify what timeline gives you what kind of blessing to be looking for. Follow the Outcast. I'm just sticking with the increased experience. The Stolen Lance, recommend an amulet drop rate. This helps out a lot. Here for the Wingard, for the Blood Frost and Death, I recommend the two-handed axe. You know, kind of makes sense. Two-handed axes. World Splitter really makes this build work just fine. Ending the Storm, highly recommend mana. 100% recommend mana. Up here, I just always take prefix shard drop rate. That's generally, you know, class affixes and that sort of thing are typically prefixes, so I recommend that. Reign of Dragons, I recommend you take the 20% all res. Spirits of Fire, take the armor blessing, but if you are not using Anchor of Oblivion, right? If you are not using Anchor of Oblivion, then take the endurance blessing here. You can get it up to 30%. It can save you a lot on your gear, and then you can use idols or whatever to try and, you know, to make up for that. That's what I recommend. And then Age of Winter, take the increased armor blessing or the physical resistance blessing if you're using Solaron steps. If you can get it high enough, it'll completely counteract any negative that you receive from Solarons. Then Last Ruin, I don't even have anything here. I don't like this timeline. Take whatever you want. The Ultra Salt right there. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and talk about your skills real quick. So we are using Vengeance, and you might be wondering, well, why are you using Vengeance? Maybe you're not aware, but Vengeance has the bolster. Vengeance we're doing for the bolster node. Less damage taken, 26% increase armor. So the idea is hit them, you get bolster, right? You hit them and you get bolster. On top of that, we get a couple other nice things, right? We also get 20% more damage for 2 seconds, along with less damage taken. And if we come on over here, our next Erasing Strike will deal 45% more damage. So now we're not going to be able to hit and then do, you know, like, we're not going to be able to do this sort of thing, right? We're going to be spamming it, but it's a nice thing to have, right? It's a nice thing to have. Like, why not? Go ahead and use it. But you could take some different things, right? So if you don't want to take Abyssal Retribution, you can come down here and grab like a Time Rot chance and an Echo chance. You can even grab some of this if you want. Vengeance deals more damage. Additionally, Echoed Vengeance cannot be dodged. So that could be a good thing. I think this is fine right here. Abyssal Retribution is something that you could pick up. You could also go over here, grab this for a Frailty chance if you like. But if I'm not mistaken, I know we're kind of jumping ahead here. But I'm not mistaken. I believe we can pick up Frailty for 5 points in Woe. So, yeah. There you go. There you go. So, yeah, put 3 points into Abyssal Retribution. If you want, you could go up here. You can grab some more Armor Shred and Physical Shred if you like. This could be a good pickup. I like converting Vengeance over to void damage. That way it can deal a little bit more damage in and of itself. Also, you're converting your bleed chance to Time Rot chance, right? Which is a nice how do I say? It's a nice union with World Splitter because it's a Bardiche base. So when I hit this enemy, oh yeah, he's dead, right? When I hit this enemy, all that bleed gets converted on over to Time Rot. All right, here we go. Moving on over to Erasing Strike. So notable nodes, final hour. When an enemy has 12 stacks of Time Rot, 100% more damage using Erasing Strike to that enemy. You can pick up 5 points into Obliteration. That gives doubled. 5 points into Obliteration gives you 50% more damage. Doubled with the two-handed weapon. That's 100% more damage. 100% more damage. 100% more damage. Huh. 2 points into Prophet's Onslaught to give you a base critical strike chance. On top of that, a racing strike cannot be dodged. This used to not be there. This is incredible. It's really nice. It kind of goes with Void Cleave, which Void Cleave for a long time could not be dodged. I think it's kind of cool that they bring it with they're bringing it back with a racing strike, right? So cannot be dodged. I put all 3 points into Essence of the End. You don't have to do this, but the way this build works, kind of jumping ahead again, in order to get your mana back, we're using a point called Void Well, and essentially when you run out of mana, I'll explain this again, don't worry. When you run out of mana, it'll consume 3 Void Essences to refund your mana. This effect has a 3-second cooldown. So, essentially, what you're trying to do is to make sure you always have Void Essences on hand. And one way to do that is if you're critting with Erasing Strike, you get a Void Essence. And you see, I'm going to hold it down, and boom, there it goes. Now, the thing is, if you have that 3-second cooldown, you got to worry about, this is where that sort of roadblock can kind of come into play. That's why I like to just, burn through your mana, attack, boom, 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 boom. Burn through your mana, boom, 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 that sort of thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you have 3 points into Essence of the End. And you are granted Void Essence every time you crit with Erasing Strike. Now, you yourself might have different sources of getting Void Essence. You could be using this node with Vengeance. Maybe you're just looking at my build guide, trying to pick up some extra notes, and maybe you're playing the more meta version and you're using Devouring Orb and you're picking up Void Essence with Abyssal Juggernaut here, right? You gain a Void Essence whenever a Devouring Orb expires. I'm not using Devouring Orb, but nonetheless, maybe you're using Devouring Orb. Maybe you don't like Healing Hands and you'd rather use Devouring Orb instead of that. You might not need all 3 points into Essence of the End. If that's the case, feel free to not put any points here, but I like having that 100% chance of gaining Void Essence whenever we crit. Going up here to Hasten Cataclysm. Obviously, we're not using the cooldown recovery speed because we don't have a cooldown on Erasing Strike. I took this just to add an extra 15 mana cost per Erasing Strike. Now, maybe you have enough... How do I put this? Maybe you have enough crit and you don't have to worry about this. Take this out. Take it out. You might be able to pull off just an infinite Erasing Strike with my current setup that way. Personally, I liked having this here, give you a little extra crit. You're off to the races. Coming down over here, this is just for pathing. 2 points into Merciful, 2 points into Erasure of the Living, 1 point into Time Loop. Man, essentially what happens is whenever you use Erasing Strike, you are now guaranteeing that your skill will echo. And the more points you put into this, you will gain another... the more points you put into this, you'll gain another echo. But every echo that happens because of this, you're going to be spending 60 mana. You can go through a lot of mana real quick. I personally did not like it with more than 1 point, but you could go for 2 points. You would probably have to pull out a Hasten Cataclysm, but you could go for that. Could be a thing. All right. Shattered Continuity. This is required. Erasing Strike no longer has a cooldown. This is how we're able to spam it. 2 points into Chamber of Fate, 100% slow chance, and melee damage to slowed enemies, 50% more damage. A lot of more multipliers. Now, maybe you have some extra points on hand. If that's the case, go into Erasure of the Living. I don't know how you have it set up, but this is where you would put it. If you don't know where to put it here. There you go. You could also put 1 point into Mark of the End if you wanted, just for a little bit more Void Shred chance, but we got other ways of getting that, and that'll be covered. So going to Void Cleave. Void Cleave is set up to be very utility. So if we go up here, every time we hit with Void Cleave, we apply 3 armor shred stacks. Nether charge gives us another charge, another charge of Void Cleave. Going over here, we convert it into a traversal skill. I've done this many times. I'm assuming you guys are aware of that. But we go up here to Abyssal Walker and Gravity's Edge. We turn it into a traversal skill. Now, you might be wondering why I'm coming over here and grabbing this. We're not really trying to do too much damage with Void Cleave. The reason why is I want 3 points in Riftmaker. With Riftmaker, I'm applying Critical Strike Vulnerability. And essentially, oh yeah, because he's dead. We attack with, you see those 3 points right up there? Almost looks like a frailty thing right there. Critical Vulnerability. What that does, if we hold down Alt, each stack of Critical Vulnerability adds an additional 2% chance to crit, reduces Critical Strike Avoidance by 10%, and lasts 4 seconds. I love Void Cleave for this reason right here. You're attacking the enemy, hit them with the Void Cleave, boom. Boom. It's easier. Boom. Yeah. Just like that. You're able to apply some more. You're able to make it easier to crit the enemy. And then over here on Fraying Strikes, Void Res Shred stacks +3. So every time we hit the enemy, we apply Armor Shred as well as Critical Vulnerability as well as Void Shred. Put 3 points into Dark Pathway for increased cooldown recovery speed. Now, Healing Hands is being activated multiple different ways. So it's not on my hotbar. I'm not using it as a traversal skill because that's what I'm doing with Void Cleave. But you could. Maybe you don't like to use Void Cleave. You can, by all means, take Void Cleave off and be using Healing Hands as your traversal skill of choice. But essentially, the way I have it set up is we're getting a little extra healing out of it. Very nice. It's not costing us any mana. I mean, I guess we could make it cost some. I'd rather just not worry about the mana drain from Healing Hands, so that's why I'm not worrying about it. I'm just no mana cost. The end. So we take 4 points in the Cleric's Hammer. This means Healing Hands is activated 100% of the time whenever we use a melee attack. So every time we use Vengeance, activated. Every time we use Erasing Strike, activated. Every time we use Void Cleave, activated. And so let's talk about a couple of the benefits. We convert it into a melee skill itself, so it'll benefit from any extra melee damage that we might have laying around. And then Halted Scourge and Turn Undead. This is very powerful because whenever you hit an enemy that is either a void or necrotic enemy, you now take 10% less damage from that enemy if it has this debuff on them. Right? If it has this debuff on them, you'll be taking 10% less damage from them. Very powerful. Let's talk about Anomaly. So you're going to want to put 1 point into Void Touched, 1 point into Immediacy. That way you no longer have to do the combo skill. You want to put 5 points into Mark of Rot. It gives you that 50% damage. That essentially what you do, you take your mouse cursor, you put it over this guy, you press Anomaly. You see that little bubble pop up. Well, now they're going to be taking 50% increased void damage for the next 5 seconds. 1 point into Time Bubble, and essentially what's going to happen with this Time Bubble, whenever you have it activated, you see how this Time Bubble is right here. Look, per second, this target is getting their void resistance shredded. Remember I said we have other ways of putting on Void Shred? This is it right here. This and Void Cleave is how we handle our Void Shred. So we use the Time Bubble. We gain some extra critical strike chance here. 2 points into Manipulation for a little extra attack speed. 4 points into Temporal Mastery would make the time bubble last longer. 1 point into Time Lord. Essentially, that way the time bubble follows us around. And yeah, that is Anomaly in a nutshell. I've used Anomaly multiple times before, so I'm assuming you guys are somewhat familiar with it. It's a great buffing skill. It's just great for buffing that way. Let's go ahead and talk about the passive tree. All right, so 5 points into Juggernaut, 5 points into Fearless for vitality and for the strength right here. 5 points into Armor Clad for that reduced damage taken from nearby enemies. 5 points into Valiant Charge for health and cooldown recovery of movement skills, which include Void Cleave because it's been converted into a movement skill. 5 points into Time and Faith. This is just a nice little nice to have. Essentially, whenever we use Vengeance, we gain 10 mana back and we gain 10% health. Works on Rive, Vengeance, Smite, or Multi-Strike. I'm not using this to regain mana. I'm just using this as a backup healing and backup mana gain here and there. If you don't like it, you can put it into here. All right. Time and Faith, mana and health. Boom. There we go. 5 points into Blade Master for increased attack speed with an axe. We're using an axe. 5 points into Paladin for Defiance. Gives us some elemental resistance as well as endurance threshold per 2% uncapped elemental resistance. Nice little endurance threshold boost. Come over here to Void Knight, put 5 points into Abyssal Endurance. Gives us some Void Res, Physical Res, as well as damage reduction for Void and physical damage taken. 5 points into Sorrow and Steel for area with melee area skills. Now, we do have a lot of area already coming to us from World Splitter. So if that's the case, if that's something that if you're really lacking on Void and physical resistance, you can put more points here. Or you can put some points down here and gain a little extra leech. Could be a thing. We also get increased melee damage and armor from Sorrow and Steel. So there are some benefits for putting points here. 5 points into Void Corruption gives us increased critical strike chance as well as critical strike multiplier per point spent in Void Knight. 5 points into Dark Maw for extra health. 5 points spent into Doom Knight for strength and health as well as 5% more armor. 5 points spent in Woe for physical and Void Pen as well as frailty and slow chance. 5 points spent in Singular Purpose. We gain more void damage, 10%, as well as a total of 10% damage reduction from slowed and time-rotted enemies. 5 points into Echoing Strikes. 10 points into Time Legion. 6 points into Dread Form. 10 points into Eternal Form. 1 point into Essence of the End. 1 point into Void Well. Extremely important, right? If you forget to put a point here and then you're like, my build isn't working, check this. Double check this, right? Make sure you have a point into Void Well. This is what makes the build work right here. Absolutely. 5 points into Mortal Cleave and 5 points into Abyssal Fluctuation. Enemy elemental damage taken is Void, 50%. Void damage taken, 20%. All right, guys, that is the build. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry, guys. I've been doing a lot of talking. Thank you so much for being here. If you like what I do here, leave a like, possibly subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next one. Going to be starting a Druid. Here pretty soon, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be my first non-Sentinel build of the season. Hopefully you guys can make it out for that one. Anyway, you guys take care. Peace out.